Hello and welcome to Super Respectable. My name is Tosh, and with me, as always, is my friend and my co-host, David Lewis. Dave, how's it going?
It's going well, Tosh. How are you?
I'm good. I'm super excited. Our guest today, we're going to dive right into it, is a mutual friend of ours and my roommate for 2 years in a row in college. And back in BC, our friend, Jamie Lynch. Hey, James, Jamie, whatever you'd like. How's it
Whoever you
going,
are.
man?
Yeah, it's going well. Thanks for having me on, guys. I'm really excited to do this and go down a bit of memory lane. It's cool to. It's like being in a time machine, right? Like it's like we fast forwarded 17 years or something like that.
Oh my God. So we were just talking about this before we started. So we all went to college together. I lived with Jamie for 2 years, and then we pretty much haven't like seen each other in like 14, 15 years. And like you said, 17 years in the future where we're married, kids, houses, careers, et cetera, et cetera. So there's so much to catch up on. But we're so happy that you made the time for us. We are so happy for your success. We've been studying up on MMA and your websites all weekend because we knew nothing about it. So I think I'm like a PhD in MMA at this point. So I had so many questions to ask and go through your background, but like just generally speaking, how has the last year been for you with COVID? How's your family doing? Are you guys been okay? What's happening?
Well, we're good. Well, thanks for asking first off. Yeah, we're good. Nothing really changed for me that much, to be honest, other than I switched sort of jobs a bit. But I mean, I was sort of all people to get, hit by COVID. Yeah. I was probably one of the best people to get hit because all my work is remote anyways. So yeah. I was sort of ahead of the game. I've been doing remote interviews for, I don't know, 5-6 years. So it's, I was sort of like prepared for this already. Like if something had happened, like I know a lot of other people have to go into an office or whatever, all my work is pretty much at home anyways. So from that standpoint, it was fine. In terms of like, day to day, I mean, when it first hit, I think the only inconvenience was we had the gyms closed here. So that was kind of a bummer because that is kind of like a nice outlet for me. But like my kids' daycare has been open the whole time, really? Just with, more safety precautions. It's a family run daycare, so there's less kids. So that didn't change. My wife started working at home, which is, good because it's, saves her a commute because she used to commute into Vancouver. Wow. We live just in the burbs. And other than that, like no one's been affected. No one's been sick. I remember I was like a little bit sick last year. So I did get a COVID test just to be safe, but thankfully nothing, no issues there. It was fine. Yeah. So I got that done. I got the nose swab thing, which wasn't that bad. They stick it up your nose. It's more like awkward than anything, but did that. And other than that, like we're very lucky, especially living here in British Columbia, because like if you're in Ontario right now, everything's locked down. Like a lot of people I know are really struggling from that standpoint. And I couldn't imagine, because I used to live in a condo, I couldn't imagine being in a condo right now. Like I'm in a 4-bedroom house here. I've got a backyard, like of all places to be, it's not a bad spot to be in right now. So just very, very grateful and very blessed of just the situation I'm in right now with everything going on.
Yeah. So you got tested, you were negative, because Dave and I have been paranoid the entire year that we got COVID, multiple times.
Some paranoid more than others. Yeah.
Me more so. But you guys have been healthy, right? Like you've been able to keep distance, wear your mask, kind of live your life and just still be safe for you and your family.
Yeah, I don't really go anywhere. I mean, other than going to daycare, going to the gym, going to like, I'll see my grandparents, but even then, like, I'm not in contact with a lot of people. So like, even before COVID hit, like, I don't really hang out with a lot of people here other than my family, just because I'm so busy or just, I have a lot of other stuff going on. So it's like, for me, it was not like, I wasn't like, I couldn't imagine being single right now. Like that's got to be a huge bummer, like trying to navigate through all that with COVID and everything. So for me, it's like, I don't go out much anyways. So like of all, like I like being at home. So it's fine with me, like not having to go out and being forced to go out and stuff, but it's pretty good.
So have you built a home gym or how are you getting around that?
No. So the gym's closed for a couple months here in BC, but they reopened them. You just have to wear a mask. So I've been going to the gym. I think when did it reopen? I want to say it reopened probably in the summer last year. Yeah. So I was able to go back and there's a gym. So Tsawwassen looks a lot different than when you guys came out here. They built this huge mall out there. It's like it's bigger than Metrotown. Like it's huge. Wow. So they have a Trevor Linden fitness gym out here and it's great and the membership's good. So I go like really early in the morning. And I go and I can work out. I just have to wear a mask and wipe down all the machines and stuff. So
can I ask a question, Jamie? Like, have you been going to the gym since university, like religiously or like consistently?
Yeah, I still go. Yeah, I don't look like a Greek god or anything, but I do it to maintain so I can eat bad food every now and then. I go really early. Like I'm up at 5 every day basically. So
because Dave, I just have to tell you, when I think of Jamie, you're probably the most disciplined person I've ever met in my life. Because I remember when I went to university, we were in the same room in first year, right? And you,
Mhm.
because I think it was because of boarding school, you told me that you were just disciplined to wake up at this time, make your bed, get like, have your breakfast and go to the
Yep.
gym, etc. While the rest of us were sleeping in and like missing first class or whatever, you were up. So that's amazing that you've like maintained that since like over the last 15, 16 years. It's just built in you, eh?
Well, certain stuff, yeah, like going to the gym is all like I just feel better if I go. And so, like for me, like if I don't go to the gym, I feel like I can't sleep as
Yeah.
well. And just like it helps with a lot of stuff. So I like going. And the goal is never to be, like I said, like to look like anything amazing. It's just like keeping in shape and
Keeping in shape.
and doing all that. So yeah, for me, it's the gym's always been like a high priority for me. Like I always make a point of going. And like I especially can't like sleeping in's not even an option now because like I have a 3-year-old. So
Yeah.
like the most I'll get to sleep in is like 7 a.m.
Yeah. I sorry, just one last point is it's so
Yep.
funny you say that is that every friend I've spoken to in our age bracket, no
Yeah.
one is like wants to build muscle or be like a Greek god. At this point, everyone's just trying to stay healthy and maintain like what they can without adding the extra pounds. Because I think we're just past that point, right? Both like
Yeah.
physically, energy wise, with family obligations. Who has the ability to like build and like eat and like just like run marathons?
Well, the eating's
now?
the big thing. Your
It's
metabolism,
hard,
that's the
man.
one. That's the one. I mean, there's a great quote out there, right? It's like you can't outtrain a bad diet, right? And like I've done it. Like I've done the months where every sort of usually every January I'll do like a full month of just eating what's called paleo, which is where basically you don't have any wheat or dairy for the entire month. You just eat basically protein, vegetables, healthy fats, all that stuff. I mean, I can do it. It just sucks because like I do like my sweets, I do like my pizza and all that. So I try and like eat pretty good during the week. Like I do like meal prep and stuff. But
Yeah.
again, it's more about just living a healthy lifestyle because if you eat bad food, you feel like crap, and then it affects all areas of your life. So for me, it's more of like just making it a priority because like I just don't want to feel bad, right? It's like it's like if you drink, right, you get hungover the next day. It's like it's not worth the the payoff, right? So it's the same thing with like eating really bad food. I try and eat a little bit better,
Yeah.
and that's why, and that's kind of tying it to COVID. Like one of the things that actually really disappoints me about a lot of the COVID stuff is like they don't talk about being healthy because you look at a lot of the people affected, they're elderly, but of course elderly are weak anyways because they're older, they're more susceptible to getting sick and all that. It's kind of a bummer when you hear a lot of the stuff talking about vaccines and recovery. They don't talk about taking vitamins or taking care of yourself. Like the one thing that I discovered probably in my 20s is like you have to exercise. Like it's not healthy to sit at a desk all day. It's the equivalent of almost smoking to a certain degree. When you're sitting down all day, your body's not designed to sit for that long. So you pretty much have to work out. Again, it's not about looking good. It's about just making sure that you're going to be able to function when you're older. That's the big thing, right?
No, Dave, you're good on that, right? Dave's always going for runs or going outside and like riding your bike when you can. Just being
it's the good thing in the Netherlands. It's actually pretty good for outdoor stuff. We got a nice park nearby. I just came back from a run, and everyone rides bikes everywhere. So that's good. There's not too much of an obesity problem in this country. We're all just really tall, fit-looking people.
That's also the food as well, right? Like there's not all that, because you look in the US, there's so much crappy food out there. Like, and that's probably why is I think the food makes a difference because it's all like, better stuff, I would think. Am I right? Or I'm just taking a shot in the dark.
It's crazy. I never realized this until I got here, is that the Netherlands is like an agricultural powerhouse. They grow so much fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
And you go into the stores and see where the food's coming from. It's all local. And yeah, people eat well here. It's not massive portion sizes. Just healthy food.
I think you guys both nailed it. I mean, we try to eat at home as much as we can and then we go out once or twice a week for like some sushi or whatever, but I find that eating at home really just makes it healthy, generally speaking, and then just using your common sense, right? I don't eat bags of chips anymore, or I don't do this and that. Like it's just, as you grow older, like anything negative you eat, just you'll feel it in your body the next day, and I just hate that feeling, right? So
yeah,
I try, but like, you got a family. We all have families. Like once in a while you want to go out for dinner or you want to have a piece of cake. You just balance, I think, is kind of the thing, But yeah. Anyways, we'll get to our main point. Jamie, I need to learn, because I remember when we lived together, sports was a huge part of your life. You were NHL.com in the mornings. I remember that was a big thing.
Always fantasy hockey, yeah.
Fantasy hockey. Yeah. But you actually, like, after you left university, you actually like went into the field, right? You kind of fulfilled that sports broadcasting goal of yours. Just walk us through your journey until now.
Yeah, I'll pick up basically where we left off in university. So I went to, after I graduated Carleton. So I don't know if you guys know this, but I actually graduated from Carleton early because I was on. So if you guys remember, I don't know if you remember this. So I was a communications major. Right. Then I my grades sucked, so I switched to English because they were like getting rid of everyone. And then I got a phone call and they're like, hey, we want to bring you back. Cause I guess everyone did bad in communication. So I ended up going back to that program, which was great. And then like partway through year 2, I was kind of like, I don't like a lot of this stuff. Like I'll finish this degree, but like, this is not what I signed up for. Like I distinctly remember taking like a theory class in like, I don't even remember the teacher's name, but just a lot of just stuff. I'm just like, I'm not into this at all. So anyways, I talked to the person at Carleton and I was like, how can I get this degree done as quick as I can? Cause you could do an honors degree or a general degree. So I did general instead, which meant I could graduate in 3 years instead of 4. So I ended up doing that, got a minor in poli-sci as well. And then ended up going to Algonquin after. Well, the plan actually was to move back home and then go to like BCIT and do like a hands-on program. But I was like, you know what? I feel like I didn't get to get everything I wanted out of Ottawa. So I ended up going to Algonquin and doing 2 years there in their television broadcasting program. So that way I could stay in Ottawa, still enjoy myself and do that. And that was great. Like I loved that program. That was probably way more, it definitely was more rewarding than what I did at Carleton. So I did that. And then partway through my last year at Algonquin, we had to get an internship, and we had this prof who's kind of an idiot, and he was giving out internships to people to like, get work in the field. And so he gave me one at Rogers, and I went to the guy and I'm like, look, man, like I'm already volunteering at Rogers. Like this isn't going to do me any good. Can you get me another internship? So at the time when the Score was a television network, he's like, oh, I know someone over here. Maybe I can get you in over there. I said, okay, that would be great. Like I can go spend like a week in Toronto and just do an internship. Well, that didn't end up panning out. And I ended up going to CTV instead. And that actually was a great internship. I got to work with their sports director. And I even did a story that was on the 6 o'clock news. You could probably dig it up somewhere.
We'll do it.
On the Carleton Ravens, actually. It was like, I was on like the news at like however old I was. But anyways, that thing with the Score, it ended up, I kept in touch with them and I ended up getting an internship with them in the summer. So when I graduated, I ended up just moving to Toronto just to do this internship because I was like, I might as well give this a shot. This is where the Mecca is. Ended up doing that, ended up getting hired. And then I hated it. I was a script writer and I kind of realized early on that I'm out of my element here. Like I'm a big sports fan, but like there's people who know everything about every sport. And I just like, I knew my hockey. I was fine there. I knew some other sports, but really when I got into like things like golf and soccer, like I'm out of my element. And I kind of realized that early on. So ended up leaving the Score after a couple months, ended up going to Fight Network. And this is kind of how it ties into what I'm doing now is, I don't know, partway through university, I started watching the UFC and it kind of reminded me a bit of pro wrestling because I used to watch that back in the day. And I don't know, I just became like a big fan. And then at the time when I was going through all this with the Score, I was kind of like, I was like, maybe like it would be better for me to go into this UFC thing because like there's not a lot of people covering it like there is in hockey. Like everyone wants to be a hockey reporter. So that's what I did. I went and worked at a place called Fight Network. And I worked there for about 4 years and ended up, working my way up, doing some on-air stuff, and then doing like, mainly I was an editor. That's what I learned how to video edit there. And then from there, just to give you kind of the quick Coles notes, because it'll take forever to sort of go through it all. But I basically left Fight Network to go to TSN. I worked there as an editor for about a year, hated the hours there, but still stuck through it. And, once Bell was doing cuts, I was kind of an easy casualty because I was on a contract. So I ended up going over to Discovery Channel and ended up working as an editor there. Same building, same company, just working a day shift. So instead of working 5 till 1 in the morning or 7 till 3 in the morning, I was working 9 to 5. So I was like, thank God. Because I was commuting in. That was the other thing. A lot of people think TSN's in downtown Toronto. It's not. It's in Scarborough. So I was commuting. I didn't have a car in Toronto. So I was taking the subway. And that's like a 40-minute subway ride to get out there. So anyways, did the Discovery Channel thing, then moved over to Rogers, worked there as like a video coordinator. But on the side, I was always doing this MMA stuff after I left Fight Network because I still wanted to do it. So I was freelancing for TSN. Then I was freelancing for Sportsnet. Fast forward to 2017, my wife and I are about to have our first child. I couldn't do both because I was making money on the side doing video interviews, doing the fighting thing. So I had to make a choice. Do I stay in the secure job in Rogers or do I go and freelance full time? Well, I quit the Rogers job, went full time freelance. And that's basically what I did until May of 2019. Then when the Score once again came back to me, this time as a digital outlet instead of a TV network, hiring me as their senior news editor. So I did that for about a year. Then last July, they just decided, hey, we're getting rid of the position. I don't think it was performance-based. I think it more had to do with COVID and them cutting back. So then I went back to being a freelancer and here we are. So I know I kind of didn't answer your question, but I kind of gave you a roadmap of where I'm at. And that's what I'm doing now. So basically what I do for a living is I get paid by like 10 different companies providing them video interviews and then they pay me like a flat rate. So that's how I make a living. My YouTube channel is actually kind of like a side thing to my full-time job. So I make money on the side doing that. And that's all from extra content I get from my interviews that I put on my channel. Plus I do a podcast and all that too. So there you go.
Wow. Busy.
I
was gonna ask, did you know going into your undergrad that that's what you wanted to do with your career, your life, is to go into sports broadcasting? That was
100%.
That was the goal?
Yeah, I knew early on. I think grade 11 is when I knew that I wanted to be on air. And I just couldn't figure out a way to do it. And like, through the traditional way was like, yeah, go to like a TSN and work your way up through that company. But like, it just never really panned out that way. And then once like YouTube was starting to pick up, I was like, I got to figure out like, there must be a way I could do this like on air and do it remote. So I just like learned how to do it. And then now everyone does it, right? It's like common practice now.
Isn't it strange that when we were in college, Facebook just started kind of, right? It was like a year or two in. YouTube was like inexistent at that point. And like, I mean, so Dave and I have had these discussions a lot because like, media and like how we try to promote and how we just try to communicate. And you seem as though you've mastered it, and that like we have this outlet and like we can communicate with all these people. Like as amazing as that is, it's also weird, isn't it? Like that anybody can like, I don't mean it in a negative way. I just like in a very kind of just basic, it's a strange phenomenon, right? That people post videos and people watch videos.
Nobody was prepared for this. Like it's such a weird, like there's good and there's bad. It's good that, we're able to communicate and still keep in touch. I mean, it was email back in the day or Facebook, like you said. Now there's, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch. I mean, you name it. There's all types of platforms that people can connect, but the good comes with the bad. And the bad is now everyone has a platform. And so, and the bad of that is, let's say you made a mistake, let's say you wrote something 5 years ago that maybe wasn't politically correct back then, you can get in trouble for that now. Or now like there's what I see a lot of is like, people, you can't talk with people online about certain topics because now there's this like bully mentality, especially on Twitter. I don't know if you guys are on there, but it's like a very much like a mob mentality. Like, we don't agree with you. We're not even going to let you discuss your point. It's like, we're going to tell you how wrong you are and we're going to harass you. And so there's sort of the good and the bad with that. And it's something that I'm going to have to teach my son when he gets older, is that like, be very careful about what you post online, because there is like a group, it's more than a group. It's like a movement of people who just want to like, that just wait on the sidelines for someone to make a mistake and then they'll come after you. So that's why like, I really don't post anything like political or anything opinionated on like any of my platforms. I post my content, I walk away, and I still get crappy comments every now and then because I do have a platform, but it's very, but I don't think like no one's like been prepared for like the because here's one thing, and we could spend like a long time talking about this, maybe even for another show, but like I really feel like a lot of the mental health issues we have right now in society are because of social media. Agreed. In a negative way.
100% agreed. I totally couldn't agree with you more. But I was just going to ask you, like, how do you deal with the crappy comments that you get? Because like, even I was watching a lot of your content, and it's pretty unbiased. Like, I mean, it's pretty just neutral facts and interviews. But I'm sure somebody doesn't like this fighter, or somebody didn't like the angle you took, or whatever. I mean, there's always criticism to be found. Like, what, you just not care, or does it get to you?
No, of course you care. I mean, I just try not to. Well, first off, on Twitter, I don't even bother, because like you're never going to win an argument in 200 characters, right? So I just leave it. And there's always like a mob of people coming after you. YouTube, I got to be a little bit better about it. Usually, if someone writes something crappy right out of the gate, I just delete the comment or I hide them from the channel, because it's like, I'm not going to reason with this person. Then there are the hate followers, which is something that I've like become accustomed to over the last year, where like people will literally watch your content just to find something you've done wrong. Like, I'll do like an hour show, and then someone will point out something very small that I've done wrong and like mock me for it or make fun of it. And it's like, those are people that like, again, like there's a lot of people who have issues right now. We have a pandemic going on. We have a lot of things where people are not, they're struggling. Maybe they're not working. Maybe they're, have health issues or whatever. And so a lot of people use social media or use these platforms as an outlet to get out their frustrations. And what they're not realizing is that like, you're just spewing more poison into this world, as opposed to like fixing your own problems. And it's something I've discovered. It's like, people don't like that I have a platform. So like that, it doesn't matter if I say something that they agree with or disagree with. It's the fact that like, they haven't figured out something in their life to get to where they want to get to. So they're trying to bring me down to their level. Do you know what I mean? And so to answer your question, like, I try and it's something I've really worked on, but like, I won't engage on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. I might write something sarcastic back if I can come up with like a funny joke, but in general, I just delete the comment, because it's just, there's a lot of like just negativity, and it does weigh on you. Like I'll have someone write, even if it's like a complete stranger, someone will say something like, you suck or whatever. It does bum you out a little bit, but I always remind myself, like, don't listen to anyone you don't respect. It's like no different than like me going up to a garbage man and saying you're doing a bad job. I'm not a garbage man. I don't have any idea about what it's like to be a garbage man. So who am I to judge you on that? It's no different than someone telling me how I should be doing my job, right? It's the same thing.
Totally. I wanted to ask actually on a slightly different topic, is I was checking out your YouTube channel, and you've got tons of interviews with fighters, and you seem to have a good kind of network of people in Ultimate Fighting and the different fighting leagues that there are. How did you come to have these kind of contacts and network of fighters that you can reach out to? Is it like a long game
Yeah, it is a
working
long
through.
game. So a lot of the fighters I've interviewed. So when I started doing this, so basically like I was always doing this on the side, and I had like an audio podcast and I was doing some writing, and then it was like I really want to be on camera, so I got to figure out a way to do this. So that's when I started doing the video interviews. And my sort of my mentality early on was like, okay, I'm going to try and get UFC fighters. Obviously, that'll get you the views, but I also want to talk to these up and comers because I know like they're probably more willing to do an interview. They're probably easier to get a hold of, and also like they could be something big, and that's happened. Like literally what I thought was going to happen where a lot of these fighters that are now like top fighters in the UFC were fighters I've been interviewing for years. There's a guy fighting on Saturday in the UFC main event. I did an interview with him back in 2015. It was an audio interview. And like, you know, I he was a nobody back then. Nobody knew who he was. And now he's fighting in a main event on Saturday. And that for me is like playing the long game where it's like, I have his number. I can get in touch with him. I know who his manager is. So it's a lot of like when I started off, it was a lot of, you know, you reach out on social media to get a hold of them, or Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever platform they have. But then I've also been working with a lot of managers over the years to the point of where like, you know, I know who's rep by who, so I'll get in touch with the manager. I'll email them and say, hey, is this person available? I just did that before I got on here. I texted a manager based out of California. I was like, hey, look, you know, talking about a fighter that just fought on the weekend. I said, hey, he's available for media. Here's my, you know, availability if he is, whatever. So it's just I have sort of a database of who works with who, which fighters I can get access to. I have a whole list of like, you know, who I can get access to, who I can't, who speaks English, who doesn't, who I need a translator for, whatever. So I have it all sort of organized. And I'm really the only guy in the industry right now who's doing like just strictly video interviews. Cause there's a lot of people that do this full time that are, you know, working for one outlet and they do a combination of things. There's a lot of full-time like writers, but I'm the only one who's doing like just strictly video as a full-time job. Like it's tough. I work for 10 companies, but that's so I'm able to make a full-time living. So
correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not like really knowledgeable about UFC.
No worries. I'll educate whatever you need.
Educate. Like boxing, I kind of get because I kind of grew up a little bit with it and stuff. So it's relatively UFC's MMA is relatively kind of a new thing in Western culture, right? I think like different forms of this art have existed in other parts of the world, but as a business, as a sport, as a phenomenon here in the West, it's what, like a decade. 10, 15
1994 was when the first UFC event was. Like, think how that's not that long ago if you think about it, right? So, and they've just think of like where that started to now, like they're on ESPN, right? So it took a while to even get to that level. And I don't think it'll ever be mainstream because I think no matter what, people are going to have a problem with fighting. Like they just do, even though it's in our DNA, even though everyone, you know, even this conversation, I'm sure has gotten to some sort of fight in their lifetime. It's not, there's always going to be people who say, it's too violent.
But is that
even though the reality is like football is just as violent, but they wear equipment so you don't see it. Like how's it any safer? Two people going, you know, absolutely driving as fast as they can into each other and giving themselves brain damage than a fighter taking a punch, right? So I don't think it'll ever reach that level, but yeah, it hasn't been around that long, and that's also why like, you know, the fighters don't get paid as well. There's not like they're sort of on the WWE model where like it's all about the promotion, not about the fighters. Like with boxing, Floyd Mayweather can make an event and have you know, it's one of those things where Floyd Mayweather can, you know, make a card and it's surrounded around him. Whereas like with the UFC builds the cards and they call all the shots. So the model's a bit different than what you see in boxing.
But I mean, so like, okay, for example, so someone wants to, and let's say Boxer X or Fighter X or whatever, and they enter. So this is like a full-time thing, is it? Isn't it not? Like you're training, you're fighting, like this is your career.
You are, but like a lot of them don't get paid enough to do it full. Like here's an example: the heavyweight champion of the UFC is a firefighter. Like he doesn't now I should be clear about this. He's not doing it because he needs the money. He's getting paid very well because he's the champion, but he still has a day job. But a lot of these fighters have other jobs, even in the UFC, because they don't get paid well. Like think about it. Like a lot of people think they're all millionaires, unless you're like a Conor McGregor or like, you know, John Jones or someone that's really well known. You're getting, you know, you're fighting as your full-time job. You're making millions of dollars. But if you're, you know, even a fighter on like a pay-per-view card, you'll be lucky if you make like, you know, 10 grand, 20 grand. Like that's, maybe you fight once or twice a year and that adds up to like 40 grand, but you got to pay your trainers. You got to, you know, eat good food. That's not cheap. You've got to, you know, pay your coaches. You got to pay, there's a lot of expenses that go in. And that's why I have so much respect for the fighters, because it is really the toughest sport to get into, I think, because you're not getting paid well. You're not even getting the glamour that a lot of these other sports get. And here's the thing, let's say you go out there and lose your fight. Like you can't fight for a couple months. It's just the way the schedule works. If you lose a game, you know, you're playing, you know, you're playing the Toronto Maple Leafs, you lose your game, you got the next night to go redeem yourself. You don't get that in fighting. You have to wait months, and you've got all this shitty fans who come in and say, oh, you got knocked out, and they're doing memes and all this shit. Meanwhile, like you're physically in pain from losing, and then you got to deal with all these idiot fans on top of it. It's a very tough and grueling sport for sure.
So Dave, sorry, I just have one little question. I know you were just going to say, so why would a fighter go into this realm in this discipline as opposed to going through maybe a more commercial one, or one that's a little bit more popular, where perhaps they could get the resources they need, they could get the money, for example? Like, why would one go into UFC then, like if because of the
so if you mean like compared to like, so I mean the money in the UFC is better than, say, like if you wanted to go into kickboxing, or you wanted to go into, even in boxing, like some of the boxing undercards, they get paid peanuts, and these are shows that are on like highly rated networks and stuff. It's tougher from that. The combat sports in general, it's like it's tough to break through. Now, boxing fighters definitely get paid more than UFC fighters, but again, that's because they control, like, you have these promoters, but for the most part, it's about the fighter. It's like for example, you got this Jake Paul guy, right? The YouTube star. He's boxing a UFC fighter coming up here in April, and they're getting paid boatloads of money, more money than even the UFC fighters get, because it's about them, and they have their audience, and they have sponsors, and they have all this different stuff. So it's like, to answer your question, I think a lot of it's the challenge. Like, a lot of fighters I talk to, they're well educated. They're fighters that have degrees and came from, I know one fighter, he was an accountant, and he's just like, you know what, it's not for me. I'd rather go and get in shape and
take
pretty much.
out.
No, but so I can understand that. It's the same way. Like, I don't think I ever want to work in an office again. I've done it. It's just not for me. I'd rather do the work from home thing and control kind of what I'm doing work wise. And especially in sports media now, like TSN just had a ton of layoffs. Like, so it's very vulnerable right now to be in sports media anyway. So for me, it's like, the nice thing with me is, like, I have so much work from different companies that even if one like falls out, I'm still getting money coming in. There's more financial security that way. So same thing with fighting, right? Like, it's like, you're, as a fighter, like it's just more exciting. I think a lot of them do it for the challenge as well. Like, it's a very challenging sport, and that to them keeps them motivated, because it's about being stimulated in life, right?
Of course.
So there's like, the one we all know is UFC, but there's a number of other fighting leagues, promotions, right? How is that working out, like the business side of things? Are there any challengers that are really threatening the UFC model?
A little bit. I mean, so equated to pro wrestling, right? Like, remember back in the day, it was WWF and WCW. It's kind of the same thing right now with UFC and Bellator. Bellator is like a promotion based out of California. They're on Showtime, which is like one of the big networks. They have all the TV shows on there and stuff. So Bellator, they're like the closest competitor to the UFC, but they're not as big. But they have a lot of like ex-UFC fighters fighting over there, and they also have like some pretty good fighters. Like, there's some fighters definitely in Bellator that would do very well in the UFC, some that maybe could be champions. So they're sort of like the competitor to the UFC. And then you have like other promotions like the Professional Fighters League, which is a company that does like tournaments. So like, let's say they'll have like a tournament for like, the lightweight class, which is like 155. So they'll have like 8 people in a tournament. They fight over a couple months, and then the winner gets $1 million. So some fighters have actually gone that route. They've left the UFC. They're like, screw this. Like, I'm getting paid peanuts. I might have a chance to win $1 million against lesser fighters. So a lot of them are jumping ship and going over there, but it's mainly just those 3 promotions. Then you have the overseas ones. You have One Championship, which is based out of Asia. They're pretty good. Ryzen, which is based out of Japan. They have like, all the Japanese fighters and all that. So, but the UFC still like, it's just like, it is like pro wrestling. Like, the UFC is like WWE, and like all the other promotions are like the competitors of WWE, which would be like AEW or like TNA or whatever those promotions are. Impact, I guess. So
got it.
Did you find that like so do you cover like Ultimate Fighting kind of around the world, or is it just mostly in North America, like globally? You
no, everywhere. Right? Well, I cover all the UFC cards, and then I cover like, in terms of interviewing fighters, I'll interview anyone pretty much. Like, I just did an interview with a fighter yesterday that's going to be making their professional debut.
No way.
He's coming over from the wrestling world, and this guy, and again, it's about the long game. Like, this guy could be something big, right? So I always try and find like up and comers and prospects and all that and everything else. And so I cover everything, but mainly what I do is UFC stuff, because the companies that pay me for interviews, they mainly want UFC content because it's going to view better as opposed to like an amateur fighter. But it's funny you mentioned that, actually, because I'm actually going to Victoria this Friday to call an event. I do commentary as well. So I'm going to be doing an event in Victoria. There's no fans. There's only 5 fights on the card. I don't know if you guys know who Robin Black is. He's a friend of mine. He's going to be doing commentary with me on the card. So I'm leaving Friday evening and then going to stay there Saturday for the card, and then coming back on Sunday. So I do that as well on the side too. So it's been a lot of fun.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask Jamie, like, with fighters from around the world, like, do you find that like culture, ethnicity, background, like different fighting styles, like what's it like globally? Because like, I remember going to Thailand, and I remember watching some people fight, and they're like really little dudes, but they look like they could kick your head off,
Oh, big time, yeah.
Whereas like here, we're more about sides. Like, what's some of your points of view, and like what have you seen globally? Like in terms of style and like background and training and etc.?
It's just interesting. Yeah, the training is obviously different. Like Thailand, you just nailed it. I mean, that is known as one of the best striking places in the world. Like they have two really good gyms there. There's Tiger Muay Thai, and then there's American Kickboxing Academy Thailand, which are like, they're known for like high level striking and Muay Thai fights and stuff. So there's like, that's what they're known for. The Brazilians are obviously known for like jiu-jitsu. That's sort of, like they were sort of like Royce Gracie, if that name sounds familiar. He's sort of the godfather of jiu-jitsu, and that's like been a big thing for Brazilians. And then in North America, it's more like a hybrid. Like you get people who are training basically everything, like your George St. Pierre's. You can do it all. You can strike, you can wrestle, jiu-jitsu, everything. So I find like there's a couple of things on that. Like I think, there's certain areas that specialize in certain things. And then the fan bases are interesting too. Like I interviewed this guy from Austria who fought over the weekend. He won. His name's Alexander Rakitch. Like he has a huge fan base. He's like a celebrity over there. Really? But to North American fans, like people are like, oh yeah, he's just like he's a good fighter, but like they don't think of him in that way. But this guy has a huge following. Like anytime I do interviews with him, it's like thousands and thousands of views.
Wow.
So it's just interesting to see like what type of following like certain fighters have or whatever. And there's especially the Muslim fighters, like they have huge followings because obviously like, the UFC goes to Abu Dhabi and they have like, really big like Habib is like a global superstar. Habib Nurmagomedov, who just retired last year. He's a huge celebrity, like in his world. He's from Dagestan. And like that region, like he's like there, he'd be like the, Michael Jordan or whatever of his region,
Yeah, I saw that. There's a clip online of after he won the fight against Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
And he filled the stadium in Dagestan. He came back to do like a homecoming, and there's like 60,000, 70,000 people like swarming the like national soccer stadium there. And it was just crazy to see the fan base he has. I guess I got another random question is, you work with a number of different clients. How do you go about like building that and marketing yourself as a freelancer? What's your approach?
So a lot of it is actually word of mouth. Like it's even though it's like a global industry, it's a very small industry. Like everyone sort of knows everyone. And Twitter, believe it or not, is like a place where everyone sort of knows each other. Like it's very much based on Twitter. Yeah. So like a lot of the jobs I've got are people I've met through Twitter. And like I used to, not now, but I used to go to a lot of events. Like and just to give you guys an idea, like because I'm a freelancer, like a lot of companies won't pay for me to go cover events. So it's usually out of pocket. Like I'll save money, go cover like an event in Vegas or somewhere, because it's an investment, right? Like if you're on the front lines, you're going to get good interviews, you're going to get good access, you're going to be familiar with the UFC and the promotions. Like I've covered probably 20 plus UFC events in my time. And I can tell you that a lot of the jobs I've got are from people seeing me at events or seeing the work I do. And I'm a little unique in the sense that like I can do everything. Like I can shoot video, I can edit video, I'm good on camera, I can write. So that makes me a little bit more attractive to certain outlets than say like someone who can just write or someone who can do certain things or break news or whatever. So a lot of the offers I got, like when I left the Score back in July, like they I sort of put out like a distress signal on Twitter being like, hey, look, I'm back to freelancing if anyone knows of anything. And I got a lot of people hitting me up for work. And so I've just, so that's sort of how I've established it, is like just like word of mouth, or I know someone that like works for another outlet or whatever, and they'll like recommend me, or it's just like I have sort of a good reputation, I would say, in the industry, not to sound conceited, but it's just like it's very like people know me, so they know like what they're getting. And so they're like, I have people reaching out to me and stuff. And one thing I've actually started doing recently is like, on top of working for outlets, I'm now starting to get sponsorships, which is good. So that also helps with my content as well. So I actually, like, I can tell you guys, this is a bit of breaking news. I just signed a deal yesterday with MyBookie, which is like a sports betting outlet. So they're now going to be sponsoring my UFC preview show. So I'll be using the odds for their show, and they're paying me a pretty good amount every month to just advertise their content on my channel. So that's another way I'm trying to make income on top of what I'm doing. Like I'm doing things unconventionally. Like I would say the people that cover MMA full time, I'd say it's probably 20% of the industry. I'd say, the other 80% are people who have day jobs and do it on the side, or there's people who are in college who are covering it on the side. Like a lot of people, it's not an industry you get into for the money. It's very tough to make a full-time living. Most of the people that do this are not like me. They work for one company, like an MMA Fighting or an ESPN or an MMA Junkie, and they have full-time benefits, whatever, and they do that and they work with the team. That's basically what I was doing at the Score. Now I'm back to freelancing. So I'm trying to find different ways to make money. So I have, like I said, my day job where I get, I pay the companies for interviews. I host a couple podcasts. I get paid for those as well. I have my YouTube channel. It's just side money. I have merchandise I sell. I hired an artist to make me a bunch of logos and stuff. I paid him for it. I'm now making that money back with merchandise where I have, if a fighter wears a shirt of mine, that's good exposure for me.
That's
So
Tosh, we got to buy some James Lynch
yeah,
shirt t-shirts.
I'll send you. Actually, yeah, if you guys are seriously interested in buying it, I'll give you a discount code, and it'll be a little bit
Oh,
cheaper
well,
because it's.
but please, we'll post it when we post the episode. Anyone
Yeah.
listening and watching will do it. But I have a question. So you were talking about your relationship with kind of the fighters, with some of the companies. Like, how's your
Yeah.
relationship with your fans been? Like people who like you have 20,000 people on YouTube, right? Like subscribers.
Yeah, it's been good. I definitely have some loyal listeners. I have people that will like donate. Like when you do YouTube live shows, you can donate. They have what's called a super chat where they can donate money. So I get people donating and really supporting my content. It's cool. Like it's cool to have an audience, and I'm very grateful for that. That's why like I do every week like a Q&A like for the audience, where if people want questions answered, it's free. You don't have to pay anything. If you want to throw me $1 or $2, that's fine. But I'm basically losing money doing it, but I look at it as an investment. I'm giving back to my audience. I'm answering questions they want. I can give some little tidbits because I do talk to a lot of fighters, so I have more insight than say some other people. So it's great. And then I actually like I have a Patreon as well that I give, like, because a lot of people are like, hey, can you talk about this? And it's like sometimes I'm too busy. Where now I have the Patreon, so if you want to sign up for $4 a month, you can get those extra videos that are only available on my Patreon as well. So I'm a very business minded person in that sense. I'm always looking at like different ways of trying to generate revenue and money just to pay my bills, basically. So
That's amazing, though. Like, congratulations to you on the sponsorship and everything you've done. Because I mean, you told us about your journey, and it highlights how it's not easy. It's not, you don't just walk in the door and it's handed to you. Like you said, you're doing these long commutes, you did these internships, you went to Algonquin and did different studies. So it's a long journey, but hats off to you to establish yourself in this domain.
Thanks,
I'm really impressed to hear all this stuff.
No, I mean, you guys know this, I'm sure, where you guys are at in your career. Like you have those years where you do question if it's going to work out or not. I definitely, I mean, there was a point where I was very close to moving back to Vancouver when things weren't working, because Fight Network, I was working there, but I was making good money and I wasn't saving any money. I was basically just like living to just, spend money basically. And then once I got the job at TSN, I actually made some like good money. It was like, okay, I can stick around. But I mean, there were tough years. Yeah. And I definitely I was working, even when I was working at Fight Network, I was working at a gym on the side. Like I was doing other stuff just to make ends meet. And now it's like, finally, I'm making good money where I'm able to save, I'm able to, provide for my family. But you got to build that foundation to get there. It's like that whole saying, right? You're in your 20s, you're building the foundation. And then your 30s is when you're like actually executing what you're doing. I'd say for most people, I think a lot of us, we're at where we're at now, we're actually able to make a living because of what we did in our 20s, the time we put in the investment. It's a lot of like, that's one thing I wish I was taught when I was younger is like, I wish people told me that like, look, you're going to have to struggle, because like, I don't think people realize that the struggle is inevitable. Like most people don't just walk into a full-time job out of university. Some do, good for them, but it's very tough to get to where you need to get to, especially in my field in media. It's very much about paying your dues,
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like a big lesson that I've learned, because I was working at a bank up until 2019, and then now I'm trying to follow your route. I started my own company and doing a lot of different projects. Nice. What I've learned is like people should just tell people in high school, like, don't rely on a salary. Don't expect to just have that as the be all and end all, because a lot of people are very secure and it works for them and they have good career trajectory. But the minute that goes away, and we've seen that with COVID and everything, they're lost because they haven't worked on anything else on the side or haven't developed hobbies and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I think I learned that lesson a couple of years ago and realized like it's important to have different streams and different things going on that you can rely on. That if one goes, you can focus on the other. So definitely a good point there.
And I'm on the same boat as you guys. I think you gotta be as diversified as possible, get all your experiences. One thing Dave and I both did was we traveled and we lived overseas. I think that was just our calling per se. Not everyone does it, but I'm glad I did. But I totally agree with you. Your 20s are time for working hard and kind of figuring out what you want. And the 30s, hopefully you reap the rewards of what you sow. But Jamie, if you go back to first year university or even high school, would you take the same path or would you make a couple changes?
I think so. I never want to be that guy like, oh, I wish I would have done that. I'll tell you one thing I wish I did do more was travel more. I did a lot more traveling after I got married because I actually had money to do it. But I kind of was like I didn't see the value in it back then. I was like, I'm not like, I got to worry about my career, but I was so focused on it. It's like I missed out on a lot of things I probably could have done in my 20s or whatever. But because I did a lot of like, not internationally per se, but I mean, over the last like couple of years, for example, went to Ireland. I've been all over in the States, like, you name it. Like my wife and I, after we got married, we did like a full year of traveling, basically. Like I was working, but basically any free time we had, we would travel to different places, New Orleans, Nashville, all types of different, we went to Newfoundland, like just all different types of places where you're having these, because that's what it's about. Like at the end of the day, And it's made me really have my, like, I have a different outlook on money than I used to, which is like,
Tell us,
when
please,
you're,
please.
when you're in your 70s, you're not going to sit on your porch and say, hey, I saved, $50 on this dinner. You're going to look back on how good that dinner was. Like, that's what I try and stress with my wife and my son is like, be smart with your money, but also like enjoy life, because you only get one life. You can't just like, traveling is so much more important than actual material goods. And like, it's your experiences that will really like be the most rewarding thing at the end of the day. So I always like, I keep that in mind. And I also like, I think, a lot of people preach saving money. I put money away. Like, I don't have a pension or anything. So it's pretty much just savings from this point out. But at the same time, like I'm of the belief of like, I'd rather figure out how to make more money than try and penny pinch. Cause I think a lot of people do that and they're missing out on a lot of things in life.
Yeah, I think I don't know if Dave, you agree with what Jamie said or not, but I do pretty much. I think the pursuit of money and being rich is probably one of the biggest fallacies that we have. And like trying to explain to a 16-year-old boy not to be a millionaire or a billionaire or dedicate your life to that is very difficult to do. But I think that's with experience, right? Like I totally agree with you. I'm not cheap in any way. I'd rather have experiences with my family, but dedicating my life to being like really super rich and destroying everything else I have would probably be like the worst thing on my deathbed as possible, right? But you want to find a balance between what you do, and I think you've kind of nailed it. Like it seems like you're very passionate about what you do, and at the same time you've been able to commercialize it as well in terms of making a living off of it. And so I mean, you found that balance, it seems like.
It's tough to find. I mean, I don't really feel like I've worked basically since 2017, because like I literally wake up and I get to talk to people for a living, and it's like, it's very manageable, and it's not like I have anyone saying you have to do this. Like I have certain places I have to do certain things I need to do, but I like the freedom of just calling my own shots and making my own money and not having to rely on like a company like flipping the switch. Like here in Vancouver, we just had a radio station that's been on the air for 20 years, and literally just on a random day, they just decided to get rid of the radio station. Like 20 years. Think about that. You've been working at a company for I don't know how long, and then out of the blue, because Bell, like, preaching this let's talk bullshit where, literally they fire all these people like a week later after they do that whole campaign. Like people that have been there for years, literally mid-air, they're doing the sports morning show and they just flip a switch and the company's gone. Like, I don't want to rely on that. I don't want to rely on, corporate people and shareholders to determine my future. I'd rather have everything in control of myself. And that's why, like, I wake up, I'm happy, I'm very grateful for what I do. I'm very, aware of what's happening. And it's just, it's a matter of just, like, I enjoy what I do. I would never do something if I didn't like it,
Yeah, that's important.
And what about your setup? I mean, we're going to post this on YouTube, but for the listeners,
I have a whole video on my channel.
Audio.
I'll send you the link, but it's not that crazy of a setup. I've got a ring light behind me here. I'm using a Sony Alpha camera that's streaming to this laptop. I've got a mixer and I've got a microphone, and that's it. Like, you don't need much. This used to be a laundry room in this house, and we took the washer and dryer to here. We took the sink out and I put it in the other room, and this is my office now. So it's just, it's like it's not a big space. It's like if you walked in here, it's a little bit of a tight squeeze, but it works. It's nice.
That's
amazing.
That's so cool. So I like off your last point, and a little because of Dave and I were very much into business and like aspects of. Do you think you would ever take your business or your infrastructure to the next level? Would you ever have your own media company or kind of do your own thing but modified for the online presence? Like, what's the future of
the future of me is like, it used to be, hey, I want to get hired full time. And I actually there's one company I would work for. I think USA Today and MMA Junkie. That's like the company I've always wanted to work for. If that ever came my way, I'd consider it because I could still work remote and I'd do whatever. But I honestly think the long-term goal for me is to just make this YouTube channel my own. And that would be sort of my own company. And I could make enough off YouTube ad revenue and sponsors where I could put everything on my channel. Because I work a lot. Like I do. Like it's in order to do this full time, I do anywhere from 50 to 60 interviews a month. It's crazy, right?
And I can't keep this up, right, Jamie? There's no one else.
It's just me. Yeah, I edit, produce, like I do everything myself. So the how much I'm working now, I don't want to be working this much when I'm in my 70s, right? So it's the goal is to get enough of a following, enough of a platform where I can just do everything on my own channel and I control everything 100%. Like I've had YouTube companies, like those like partner companies come to me and like with offers and saying, hey, well, we can do all this stuff for you, we'll manage all this stuff, and I've just declined them because I don't want to get involved with any sort of sponsorship or any sort of partnership, I should say, where a company has the ability to do it, do certain things on my channel. I want to do it all myself. I want to give this some time because I've just basically started this channel back up again in July. So I feel like, I'm starting to get some sponsors. I want to really build this thing up where it can be something where, kind of like a Joe Rogan, where I basically control everything and I'm getting paid through sponsorships. That's the goal. That's basically what I'm looking at now.
Yeah.
And so I watched a few of your YouTube videos. Do I need to watch the whole ad for you to make money? How does that work?
No, I think even if you just click skip ad, I think I still get money or whatever. But I don't mind if you skip. I mean, it's just there's people who do watch it. There's people who have it on loop. Like I make enough from YouTube on the side that it's a good little bit of money every month. So I'm fine with it. It's all good. So.
Okay, we'll post a link after this episode, and we'll
sure.
get our viewers to spend some time watching some of the ads.
Sure, if they're MMA fans. If not, I got a couple other cool videos in there. Like I said, I have my studio set up. I did like a behind the scenes blog, so you can kind of see what a typical day looks like for me and stuff. I've done that. I've got a lot of interesting stuff, like just like not even just MMA related on here as well. Just like a few things.
It's interesting because some people say, start a YouTube channel, earn passive income, but based on what you're saying, it's anything but passive. You're doing tons of work. A lot of interviews, so you got to arrange and organize and
my interviews aren't even on my channel. Like so the interviews that I do, the full interviews go to the outlets. But what I do is I take extra footage from those interviews, put them on my channel to direct them back to the full interview. Plus I can make some ad revenue off that as well. So I do this. The most highest rated videos on my channel are these things called the pros picks, where I ask fighters about upcoming fights, ask their prediction, and I put it in a compilation video, and those do very well. So that's how I'm able to make most of my money. But to give you guys a little Cole's notes, like basically, if you want to make money off YouTube, you got to get 1,000 subscribers. Once you get 1,000 subscribers, every 1,000 views, you make anywhere from $1 to $3. So it's tough. Like I remember when I started out, I'd be happy if I made $100 a month or something. Now it's more in the thousands. So it's a little bit better, to just have some side income. And a lot of that, honestly, it goes into savings. It goes into stuff back in this channel. Like I've invested a ton of money into just top-notch equipment, things that I can use to make my, my content better. Right. So.
I know we're almost nearing your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries.
But a couple, I have two last questions. I don't know how many Dave has, but would you, like, as someone who I think of you as someone who knows the sport in and out, the business aspect of it, the physical aspect of it, et cetera. Like, what's the future of UFC MMA? Like, what do you think is going to happen in the next 5-10 years? Is it going to grow? Is it reached its peak? Like more people will follow? Like, what's your perspective on this?
It really depends on the fighters. I think you need like the problem is it's very tough, and boxing's dealing with this as well, is it's very tough to create like a superstar, like a Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan. Like McGregor's certainly done that because he was he ticked all the boxes. It was great self-promoter, great fighter, action, exciting fighter. And he came from an area in Ireland, like he came from Ireland. So like all these Irish fans are like, this is our hero, right? So it was sort of the triple threat, but it's so tough to replicate that, to get all three in that box. So it really depends on what fighters are coming up and how that's sort of going to take the world by storm. But I mean, the UFC's on ESPN. I don't think it gets any bigger than that. They seem to be making money. Like, I think it's going to be kind of where it is unless some fighter comes along. I think that's really going to determine where it goes. But I think it'll get bigger. But like I said, I don't think it'll ever reach like the NFL or NBA type levels that you see with some of those sports. Cause it's just so like, even though it's a global sport, like I still think there's, like I said, people that are still going to find it too violent.
Really? Huh. Interesting. Dave, do you have another one or?
Yeah, just quickly, I was going to ask about, the education you had at Algonquin and the, I guess, training you had at all these Canadian media outlets. Sorry, someone's pinging me and I keep getting all these messages.
Oh, don't worry about it. I know it's annoying. Multitasking.
Yeah. So, how much of that helped you in terms of where you got today to learn all the different little technical skills that you needed, or how much did you have to teach yourself, that sort of thing?
So yeah, it's a mix. Like I think the one thing I will say that benefited me greatly in university was how to write. Like definitely, like you need to write in this industry because a lot of the jobs are like news writing jobs or whatever. So that definitely helped out. I had a good understanding of like how to write, even though it's a little bit different writing like a full essay as opposed to doing like a news write up. But still, that helped for sure. But yeah, Algonquin, I learned how to edit there. I knew a bit of editing when we were in university. I was kind of playing around with that a little bit, but I learned how to edit there on Final Cut. I use Premiere now, but same sort of like concept. And then college, like it really was good. Like I was doing my own sports show. I had like all this stuff that was like, like very technical that helped out. But a lot of it now, honestly, is just stuff I've learned. Like there's so many resources online, like how to edit, like how to, do stuff on YouTube and what works and what doesn't. And it's just things I've picked up. Like there's a lot of good resources back like here now that wasn't available back when we were starting, like when we were in university, for example. So I'd say it's a combination of, some stuff in college that I learned, some stuff from working in TV, because that is one advantage I've had going into this space, is that I've worked in the television industry, whereas a lot of the people that are covering the sport now didn't come from that background. So so they don't know what looks good video wise, or what it means to have 60 frames per second on a video as opposed to 30. You know what I mean? Like those are types of things that I know that other people don't. So I'd say it's a mix, but a lot of what I've learned over the last couple of years has just been through the internet and knowing people. And even this setup I'm using now, it was a producer I used to work with that was like, "Hey man, have you thought about doing this?" And I was like, "I haven't, and this looks way better." So yeah, it's been a combination of both for sure.
Awesome.
So you just touched on my last point, actually, is that like you're kind of a man of all trades, because not only do you do the online thing, but you came from the traditional communications background. What do you think the future of online media is going to be? Do you think this YouTube thing is going to stick around? Do you think it's going to die out? Like,
I'll tell you what it is. I'll break it down for you very simply. So do you remember back in the day, the radio was the big thing, right? Like, everyone was like listening, you'd just gather around the radio. I mean, that wasn't our generation, but that was our, grandparents' generation. They would sit around the radio. And then the TV replaced that and the radio became the background. Well, I'll tell you what's the new TV. It's your phone. How many times when you're sitting watching a TV show, you're looking at your phone? That's the TV now. The traditional TV is now your radio. Things have reversed. Like, I think you're seeing everything is becoming so, we're addicted to our phones. We could get into a whole podcast about that and how it's like a slot machine where literally, you post something on social media, pull that slot down. It's either going to be something really good or something shitty and you're going to lose money. Right. So it's we're addicted to that dopamine hit of like looking at our phones is something that is really sort of keeping us in. And then if you've seen that documentary on Netflix, whatever it's called, I can't remember the name of it, social media dilemma. It all shows. And it's true. Like, I searched for weight equipment the other day and now I'm getting ads for that everywhere. They know what they're doing. So in terms of the future, I think online is the way to go. I think you're going to see phone and, digital stuff really overtake TV. And I think you're seeing it now. Like, you even look at TSN and Rogers and all these other networks, like people aren't watching sports as much as they used to. So it's all going to be more, I need them information as fast as I can in the shortest amount of time. That's what the future is basically.
But like, sorry, just a sub question is that, knowing that, do you build your content for that medium? Because, for example, 100%. Like you do, okay. So like, just because like my interviews are short, I don't make them that long. Like, people want to do like an hour-long podcast. Good luck trying to get people to tune in for that for an hour, unless you're like a Joe Rogan or someone, right? So my interviews are short. My clips that I post on my channel are short. I do an hour-long Q&A or podcast, but that's just because I have to, because if I'm previewing an entire UFC card, I have to go through everything. But I put timestamps in there, so if people want to hear about my thoughts on a specific fight, I put it in the YouTube description so they can fast forward to that part. So it's very much, I'm very mindful of that. People have very short attention spans. People like the clickbait stuff, whether it's something controversial or something interesting. So I'm always mindful of that. But saying all that, I try and keep things professional. I don't go out of line. There's things I could do that I don't. I try not to be disrespectful. I try and be a pro. I treat people how they would want to be treated, right? So. That's interesting. No, it's very, it's at the end of the day, I guess all of it's a business too, not only what you do, but like what the UFC is or the MMA is, and everyone needs to kind of find their route into it. But I like the approach that you take. I really thought your content was very professional and not really just like garbage, like some people do just to get viewers, so it's content. But I'm going to keep watching and I'm going to try to learn a little bit more. Like you said, I think like I know Conor McGregor and I know Khabib and I know like some of the other fighters, but I didn't really know the technicalities of MMA. But to me, it seems like these guys are real athletes, and it seems very, very gruesome and like tiring in terms of actually trying to be an athlete like this. But I had no idea that these guys were not making like big bucks. It was just
go look. You can look. Go Google right now after this. Go look UFC 259 payouts. Go on Google. You'll see the pay discrepancies. Like even a guy like Israel Adesanya, who's one of the champions, I think he only got like 600 grand. Like if you think about it, that's not that much compared to like a bottom, like a third line winger in the NHL is making $1 million. Like think about that. That's crazy, right?
Yeah, and like somebody like wasn't it didn't Floyd Mayweather make like $250 million for his last fight or $300 million or something? That's insane, especially when you put your body through that much work. And like that,
right, and that makes sense because there's a demand for it, right? But there's not a demand for like UFC. Like I guarantee you guys couldn't name all. You probably couldn't even name 2 UFC champions right now. But that's because it's so hard to like break through and become that superstar. That's kind of what I'm getting at, So
Dave, name 2 UFC champions. Go. I don't know.
George St. Pierre, Conor McGregor.
Former champions, but I'm talking
champions.
Like currently.
I can't do anything current. No, I'm out of the game.
There you go. And that's and like I usually use my dad as like the gauge of that. I'll text my dad and be like, "Do you know who's fighting tonight?" And if he knows, then obviously it's a big fight. And if it isn't, then he doesn't know, right?
Is your dad into the UFC and the MMA as well with you?
A little bit. He's still more like a hockey fan and stuff, right? So he's he'll watch here and there. Like I know some pay-per-views he'll order, but he'll just he's a casual fan at best. Kind of like how I'm a casual fan of boxing,
Yeah. Jamie, thank you so much for your time.
Dude, we got to do this again. I feel like we just scratched the surface. I got like 1 million questions for you guys too. So next time maybe we can do like a round table and just see what you guys are up to.
Anytime.
I'm very curious now. But hit me up whenever, man.
We're gonna post. We'll post all your links online. Please send us that link for the merchandise, and we'll get some of our viewers to do it. And like, all the best, man. I mean, like, congratulations. It's so nice to
Thank
catch
you.
up.
Same to you guys, man. It's,
Yeah,
it's
great
great
to see you.
where you guys have done so successful and doing everything. It's cool to see. We've all made it, you know. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
No problem, man. All right, I gotta go, but yeah, just keep me in the loop, and I'd love to do this again. Let me know whenever you want. I'll make time for it for sure. So.
Appreciate it.
Awesome.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Jamie.
Take care.
All right, guys, have a good one. See ya.
Bye.
Take care.